I am a scientist, so I want to start with an experiment, but I need your help. So everybody pay attention, wake up. I'm going to sing the first line of a song. You're going to sing the next line. Ready? Put your books down, pay attention. Ready? I don't want to grow up. Good. Next one. My baloney has a first name. Okay, last one. This should be really easy for all of you. Like a good neighbor. Any agents? Okay, no agents have appeared. Those songs are all indelibly stuck in our heads. We can thank Barry Manilow for that last one. He wrote it the year I was born. So we have all clearly grown up with advertising in our lives, and we are inundated with it. You probably feel one of three ways about advertising. There's a group of you out there that thinks advertising is entertainment. It's fun. It's LeBron James and some kind of pump-up sports ad. It's some kind of tear-jerking story about a mother and the way she relates to her daughter. Or it's, hello, ladies. Look at your man. Now back to me. Now back at your man. Now back to me. The second group of you think advertising has no effect on you at all. You do not buy based on brand. You buy based on what you believe in. And we know who you are because you're not very fashionable. Sorry. The third group of you thinks advertising is evil. Advertising is full of snake oil salesmen that lie to you. And of course, you think about big tobacco. More recently, Volkswagen. I don't know if you know the story. They actually coded their computers on the cars to lie about their emissions when they could sense they were in an emissions test. So there are 10 or 20 million cars on the road that are belching out 10 times the emissions compared to the clean diesel that they promised. Snake oil salesmen. I was in that group. I totally thought advertising was evil. I went to a Quaker high school. I went to a liberal college. I decided I wanted to help the planet, so I got a PhD in ecology. I was going to make a difference, and advertising was evil, and it was all about superficial things that people wanted us to buy that we didn't need. So, unexpectedly, of course, I find myself in advertising. The irony of this was not lost on my friend Chris. He gave me a bottle of snake oil. If you can't see what's in there, yes, it is a real snake. I'm not going to sell this to you, but it will cure your rheumatism and your addiction to Facebook. Well, once I got the job, I needed to get good at it. I'm a scientist now doing advertising, so what's the science of marketing? Turns out there isn't much. Turns out the best people could say about the theories of marketing was connect to the hearts and the minds of your audience. And I thought, wow, that's kind of medieval. That's like saying we're going to use all 4 elements of the periodic table: air, earth, wind, and fire. So I wasn't going to learn from the science of marketing. I thought, well, what can I learn from my past that's relevant? And around that time, I read an article by Rory Sutherland. He heads up Ogilvy, a big agency in London. And he said, we spend so much time thinking about how marketing works and how direct mail works and how social media works. We've taken our eye off of a more important question: how do people work? And I thought, well, hey, I'm an ecologist. I might know something about how people work based on how animals work, how nature works. Well, it turns out there's a lot we can learn from nature. Take the majestic elk. These are abundant in Colorado, where I live. And every rutting season, the males grow these beautiful, huge antlers. And the thing is, they have to grow this in about 3 months, and they weigh 40 pounds, and they are made of bone. Imagine growing 40 pounds of bone in 3 months, just to say, hello, ladies. So this is a conspicuous amount of consumption, conspicuous resource use to advertise. On a smaller scale, the Australian peacock spider is about half the width of your thumbnail. It's tiny, but as its name implies, it has this beautiful coloration, peacock-like, on a flap on its back. And during its courting dance, it flips the flap up, and it does a little dance. It even raises 2 of its legs, and it does this cute little thing. to try and impress the ladies. If it does, if that beautiful precision and conspicuous level of detail and precision impresses the ladies, they mate. They get to reproduce. And if not, she eats him. So hopefully, if there's one thing you take away, you realize that your dating life is a lot less risky. Flowers are nothing but advertisement. They are an advertisement to pollinators to come get free food, and unknowingly, as you can see, they get covered with pollen, and when they go to the next flower, that pollen hits the stigma, goes down to the ovary, and the flower gets to reproduce. So all those beautiful colors out there, and even things in the ultraviolet spectrum that you can't see, are advertisements by the flowers to the pollinators. So advertisements are abundant. It's not just about sex, though, of course, though advertisement is usually about sex. It's also about violence. The western rattlesnake, the western diamondback rattlesnake, as its name implies, has diamonds on its back. It has a head that's a little bigger than its body, and it has a very conspicuous rattle. And if you hear that, that's advertising that if you try to eat me, I will kill you. So violence is being advertised, but there's also deceptive advertising in nature. The bull snake doesn't have venom, but it looks just like the western diamondback. And it even makes the rattling sound the way I do, with its mouth. False advertising in nature. Flowers, I'm going to end with one more flower story. There's a whole family of orchids that rely on wasps to get pollinated. And they're beautiful. But here's the thing. That flower looks and smells just like a female wasp. So instead of spending all this energy producing pollen to give away to these wasps, this orchid deceives them into thinking that this is a female. The males get all hot and bothered. It drives them nuts. They come over and try and mate with the flower, and in all the jostling, that top little petal, bloop, drops some pollen on the back of the wasp, and the wasp goes off thinking, woohoo, more females, and mates with the other orchids, and the pollen gets distributed, and the orchids reproduce. Genius. So, there is a lot of advertising in nature. What are they advertising? They're actually not advertising the antlers or the colors or the rattle. They're advertising their genes. Good quality genetics are vital in choosing your mate. They're advertising your health. How healthy are you as a potential partner? They're advertising their nutrition. How much nutrients are in the pollen, and of course they're advertising their venom. All these things can't be seen. And that's because what matters most in life is invisible. So we use the visible to grasp at it. In nature, advertising is a visible way to communicate the things that matter most. Now over time, things that get duped will die off. Like if all you do is mate with flowers and you're a wasp, you're not going to pass on your genes, right? If you're a female elk and you pick a male elk that's got like, you know, the Grinch-style fake antlers tied to its head, and it's not actually a healthy male, those females will die off too. So those that get duped and those that deceive will die off. And in a weird bit of foreshadowing in my own career, one of my professors and advisors from University of New Mexico wrote a paper with his wife about this in Nature called Truth in Advertising. So, does this have any bearing on how we live? Absolutely. We don't have antlers, but if you want to impress the ladies, you get a stretch Hummer for that special event. Gets about 8 miles a gallon. So, conspicuous amount of energy going into that. If you don't have a carapace covered in a peacock-like bunch of coloration, you go shopping. And I did some research with these guys picking out their clothes, and I was amazed at the level of detail in the embroidery in their shirts and the stitching in these very expensive boots that they had. And even in their sideburns, they had these amazing little patterns. And you know folks who take a lot of time to put their hair in just the right way. This is peacocking. Quite simply, it's a conspicuous level of detail. This is not lost on advertisers, of course. Rolex knows this, so when they're marketing a $15,000 watch, this beautiful Daytona, they talk about the precision timepiece that it is. It doesn't really tell time any better than a $50 watch, but the precision, the conspicuous precision, is just like the peacock coloration of that spider. Now, it's not all about more and better and more expensive, because luxury goods are not the only kind of advertisement, and in fact, it really depends upon what invisible things you're trying to communicate. If, on the one hand, you are the head of Morgan Stanley and you manage $1 trillion in resources, then yes, you want a beautiful Italian suit, you want expensive Ferragamo shoes, a tie that's in fashion, and you wear that Daytona watch, and you get the stainless steel one because that's all the rage on Wall Street right now. On the other hand, if you wore that on campus, if you were a Harvard professor, you'd be laughed off campus. They'd think, you're so superficial. You're not caring about the things that matter. Because if you are the world's best ant biologist, then you wear, a frumpy suit. Maybe it's 20 years old. You don't care. You wear a tie, and maybe it matches or it doesn't. You wear a Swiss Army watch because it's, reasonable, functional. And that's because you want to communicate that what you care about is scholarship, science, research, knowledge, ants. You care about ants? That's how you look. And this took me to another unexpected realization, because here I was, an ecologist who wanted to save the world, and now I'm in advertising, selling stuff. And I used to think advertising was evil, and I used to think all of this stuff was superficial. And what I realized was, we aren't superficial creatures, we are symbolic ones. The ant biologist is just as focused on his outward appearance as the head of Morgan Stanley. It's just he chose very different things to communicate what matters most to him. And those things are invisible. Those things are his trustworthiness, his intellect, his caring. And you all care about those same things. You want to know if someone's going to be a good spouse, a good business partner, a good friend. And all those things are invisible because you know it stinks to get burned. And all I have to do is think about Bernie Madoff or Lance Armstrong to know how much that stinks. So we are not superficial creatures. We are symbolic ones. Today, I want to convince you to change the way you think about advertising. I had to. It's your turn. Those songs are stuck in your head anyway, so you might as well enjoy them, and you might as well see them in a new light. This is the light you should see them in. It's not just entertainment. It's not irrelevant noise that you're above, and it's certainly not evil. No, it's useful, and you use it every single day to navigate the invisible. How do we use this? When you're standing in front of 90 linear feet of laundry detergents in a store that has 45,000 different products on average, I know the math, you're trying to guess which of those will actually clean your clothes best. That's invisible. You can't tell just by looking, but you have to use the visible to guess at it. You have to use the advertisements to try and guess which detergent works. So you use Oxy, or you use plant power, or whatever it is they're throwing at you to try and guess. When you're looking at the eggs, and you want to know whether organic eggs from vegetarian-fed hens, yes, they are very principled hens. They started when they were teenagers, of course. When you're trying to decide whether these eggs are going to be really healthier for you and your family, and certainly whether they're going to be worth paying twice as much, you can't tell by looking at it, because visibly they look just the same as any other egg. So you're guessing at the invisible, and you need to use the visible to grasp at it, just like every other species. And I want to see a show of hands here. How many of you have ever had a day where you got up and you stood in front of your wardrobe and you hemmed and hawed over what to wear because you wanted to make the right impression with what to wear? How many of you have ever had a day like that? Okay, there's one gentleman over there who's never had a day like that, apparently. No, yes, you have? Hemming and hawing about your clothes? Okay, good. I think that's about 100%. I know I hem and haw about what to wear, and I'm relieved, having learned all this, that I'm not superficial for having more shoes than my wife does. But I will also impress upon you that you should take an extra minute, not just to communicate what you want through your clothes, because that's what we're doing. We're trying to choose what to communicate through our clothes, but make sure that what you're wearing is a little unique because you don't want to look just like everyone else in the office. So in closing, what matters most in life is invisible, and we use the visible to grasp at it. Every species on the planet does that. And there's some deception in advertising, but that should get weeded out, and we should hate the deception and the lies, totally hate on that, but don't hate on the advertising, because we use the visible to grasp at the invisible, which means we are not superficial creatures, we are symbolic ones. And in closing, that means advertising isn't evil, it's nature. Thank you.